you want to get started with free motion quilting, then you're going to have to learn how to set up your machine and fit your free motion foot. Don't worry, I've got you completely covered in this complete and utter back to basics video for absolute beginners at free motion quilting. Who am I? I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. Let's go check out exactly what you need to do first. First things first then, we are going to have to attach our free motion walking foot. And in order to do that, you're going to need your free motion walking foot, obviously, and you're going to need the screwdriver that comes with your machine, because that is designed to fit all the little screws and bits and bobs that you have on your machine. Before we start doing that though, let's have a little close up at your free motion walking foot, just so you understand it a little bit better and start to make friends with it. Over on the left here, you have a section that will fit onto your presser foot holder. Now, they're all slightly different in different machines, but it will look something approximating that. They tend to fit on with a screw, so the screw goes through here. Don't worry, I'll show you all close up in a moment, but I just wanted you to get to understand what this looks like. So there'll be a section on the left that does that. It holds it on to the presser foot holder. Then if we look at the quilting foot itself, the foot is on the bottom. Mine is a C shape. Yours might be an O shape. Mine is metal. Yours might be a plastic. Either is fine. All the options are fine, but that is the foot. Now, the foot hovers slightly above your quilt. Just sort of like that. So if you imagine my finger is the quilt, the foot hovers slightly above it. And it doesn't sit down onto the quilt like your normal presser feet do. Your normal presser feet press down onto the fabric of the quilt. Your free motion quilting foot does not do that. It hovers slightly above it, but every time a stitch is made, that spring comes down and it pushes that foot down onto the fabric. And it does that by this little bar at the top that sits on your needle bar guide. Sorry, my brain went into a menopausal pause moment there. That sits onto the needle guide bar, and as the needle guide bar goes down and comes back up again, that makes this go down onto your quilt every time a stitch is made. So it doesn't work quite the same as a normal presser foot. Okay, so having established its anatomy, let's put it on to your machine. To get our free motion foot onto our machine, we're going to have to take whatever foot off that you've had on. So I've got a presser foot here. So we take our presser foot off in the normal way. I've got a little black clip at the back which I push in, but I guess if you're doing free motion quilting, then you probably know how to change your presser feet. So I take my presser foot off. Then I need to take this little section off. Now it's a presser foot holder. I like to call it an ankle because you have a foot and then you've got an ankle that holds your foot onto your leg. So that's what I've always called it. So I get my screwdriver in, and I'm going to disappear a little bit because I need to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to unscrew my screwdriver very carefully to drop my ankle down. Okay, there's nothing more technical than unscrewing that slightly. Now you'll see that I have left my screw in place and it's holding on by its first couple of threads. The reason I do this is that if you've discovered this with your walking foot, if this comes out all the way, it can be a little bit of a to get back in again. So I try and unscrew it and just leave a little bit in place because they're a bit fiddly. Now, you know I told you about the thread guide bar. This is it here. This is the bit that goes up and down when your needle is going up and down. And you'll know that if you've had your finger underneath as it goes down, it can hit hard and you go, ouch, or worse to that effect. But that's the bit that we want to pay attention to. So if I've got my free motion foot here, then I need to slip that gap that is here. I need to slip that over the screw, okay, just like that. Now, can you see that on my free motion foot, this bit here behind the attachment is a sort of squarish shape, and that fits nicely over this holder, the presser foot holder that comes down here. So I am going to put that over the screw, and I'm going to almost like pull it across so it's sitting onto that holder there. Meanwhile, I need to check that the top of my free motion foot, remember that little bit at the top here? Can you see that bit there has to go over the top of my thread bar guide, because that has got to go up and down. Do you remember we spoke about the spring goes up and down? That's the bit that makes it happen. All right, so having got that into place, I then simply screw it up, which is surprisingly difficult with a camera in the way, which I'm going to keep knocking, so just excuse me if you're looking at the top of my head in the little window. I also haven't got my glasses on. I mean, it's all a thing. There we go. Now, one thing you want to make sure of is that you tighten that screw up really tightly, or as tightly as you can. And the reason is because when we're quilting, whether we're walking foot quilting or we're free motion quilting, we've got a lot of vibration going on in your machine. So you need to make sure that your needle is in tight and your feet are on really tight. If you've ever had your walking foot become loose, that's because it's not on tight enough. You really need to get that tightness in there as much as you can, and we need to do the same for our free motion foot as well. It's just the vibration that can work things loose. So you need to make sure that's very tight. We need to make sure that little top of your free motion foot is above your thread bar guide, and then that is sitting nicely in position, ready to go. So having done that, and you can slow this part down if you want to rewind and slow it down and go through it again, you can. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it off and I'm going to put it on again with you. So to take it off, I'm unscrewing it. So I unscrew the screw so it doesn't come all the way out, because we don't want to lose it. I'm taking it off, and then we're going to put it back on again. So slowly, that little gap here goes over that screw, lining up against this down bar here. This is what holds your presser foot into place, and we need to make sure that the top little bar is sitting over your thread bar guide at the top here. And having got that all into position, your C or your O is facing towards you, and then we tighten up that screw as tight as you can. So I'm using my finger, and then I'm going to use my screwdriver. So I'm going to do that slightly off camera because it's really difficult to get to with a camera in the way. I mean, oh, the pain and the agony of showing you with a camera in the way. So let me do that, and let's get on to the next thing that you need to do to set up for free motion quilting. Next up is choosing the correct needles and threads. But before I talk about those, just very quickly, make sure that you put the presser foot and the ankle, because we're calling it that now, aren't we? The presser foot and the ankle that you've taken off your machine, put it somewhere safe, because we all know there's a naughty little elf that lives in all sewing machines everywhere around the world, and you put things down next to your sewing machine and they disappear. So put it somewhere safe. So let's talk about needles for a moment. Now, with quilting, a quilting needle is a good idea, and these work by separating the fibres of your quilt, so it doesn't shred the quilt as you're doing or your quilting action. Now, these are great for walking foot quilting, definitely recommend them, and you can use them absolutely for free motion quilting. But if you find that your thread keeps breaking, or it's just not very happy and the tension's off a little bit, you might want to try a top stitch needle. Now, I've experimented with the both, and this is my personal opinion. It's not written down anywhere in any of the books or anything like that, but you might want to try a top stitch needle. I've just found that they act so much better with free motion quilting. I think because they're stronger, they're shaped like an arrow, and they pierce much, not easier, that's the wrong phrase, or the wrong word, but they just seem to work a lot better with free motion, or free motion works a lot better with a top stitch needle. So it's the shape of them, they're stronger, they're designed for a bit more heavyweight or heavy duty stitching. And I think free motion quilting, I know free motion quilting is pretty heavy going on your machine and on needles. Now the weight of the needle, I tend to go with a 90. Whatever needle I choose, I go with a 90/14. And that's because on the whole, we are using a thicker thread, that's our quilting thread, but we've got our 3 layers of our quilt to go through. So depending how thick that is, you want to go up in the weight of your needles. So we're looking at a 90/14 here. So when we're looking at the thread, because it depends on the effect that you're after, and this is now personal choice. There is no absolute guide to this, but I tend to use the thick 30 weight threads. This is a Gutermann one, and the reason why I use that is because it's thicker, and because you can see it more when you're doing your free motion designs on the top of your quilt. Just like when we do our walking foot quilting, I use the same thing, but that's not a finite, it's not the only one I use. I use metallics, I use rayons, and all sorts of different threads to give different effects. So that's up to you, but what you really want to be making sure is that the same weight thread is on the top as is on the bottom in your spool. So these are both 30 weight threads. They don't have to be the same colour, but get the same weight threads going on. Okay, so that's your thread and those are your needles. So let's get one of these into the machine and we'll go on to the next part of setting up for free motion quilting. Next up, we need to drop or lower our feed dogs. What am I talking about? Good question. So your feed dogs are these serrated teeth that you find on your base plate. Their sole function in life is to create your stitch length. So when you set your stitch length on the front of your machine, it's your little friendly feed dogs that move along your stitch length, whatever you've asked it for. It'll be at your command to do that. Except, of course, with free motion quilting, we are now in charge of your stitch length. Oh no! Don't panic. It's okay. We've got you covered. So, because you are in charge of your stitch length, we now need to drop or lower our feed dogs. And we do that by a little stitch at the back of your machine, which you may not have discovered yet. But if you turn your machine around and have a look, you will find a switch that looks a little bit like that. Now, it could be here on your machine, it could be on the sort of edge panel here, it might even be on the end of your machine, but generally they are on the back and they look something like that. So have a look around the back of your machine and you're looking for a couple of symbols. So your switch will be over on the side that has 2 little triangles with a line crossed through it. That means your feed dogs are up. So if we look at our machine here, we will find that our feed dogs are up and we can see them and we can run our fingers over them. We want our feed dogs down. So where you've got 2 little triangles with a line on top, resting on top of our triangles, that's where we need to move the switch to. So if you watch these feed dogs at the same time as I'm moving this switch, you will see that as I move the switch over, these feed dogs will disappear from view. Now, a little tip here is that this switch is actually surprisingly stiff and surprisingly difficult to move over. And I don't want to break my nails, quite honestly, because I like to make them all looking nice for you under camera. So we want to move that switch over to the other side, even if you haven't got the nails, it is quite stiff. So get the end of a pair of scissors or your screwdriver and you can push that across to the left. You can see that's a bit of welly that we need to move it over. But as we've done that, can you see now that these feed dogs on the top here have completely disappeared? Now, I'm going to cover this later on in another video to show you how to actually get started with the free motion itself. But can you see that these feed dogs have dropped? If I move this switch back over again, so let's just say I've finished my free motion quilting and I've moved my switch back over because I want to do some normal sewing again and I need my feed dogs, you'll see that the feed dogs haven't come up. But don't worry, because the minute you start stitching and your machine does its rotation to make the stitch, those feed dogs will come back up again, I absolutely promise. So as long as that switch has come back over to your little triangles with a line through it to say my feed dogs are up, even though they look like they aren't, they will appear when you start sewing. But for now, for our free motion, we want our switch over to the left with those little triangles with the roof on top. So that's our feed dogs. Now let's switch our machine around and get on to stitch length. There's a clue in what I've just said to you a few minutes ago. So I'll see you in the next section. Stitch length then. What do you think it needs to be? So standard stitching, we need 2.5 mil. That's just our normal everyday sewing seams together with our normal presser feet in place. If you've watched my video on the correct stitch length for quilting for your walking foot quilting, then we need to put that stitch length up. Because we're going through multiple layers, we need a longer stitch length. So it might be worth checking out my video on stitch lengths, because that will probably help you with stitch lengths and stitch widths. But we need a higher stitch length. We don't really need as high as 4, but either a 3 or a 3.5 for walking foot quilting. However, when we're free motion quilting, we are now in charge of our stitch length. Like, you're completely in control. So although a lot of manuals will say, put that down to 0, if I can keep pressing. Okay, well, it doesn't go down to 0. But if you can put your machine down to 0, your manual might say, put it down to 0. You might see instructions that say, put it to 0. But honestly, it doesn't matter. The reason why it doesn't matter is because we've dropped those feed dogs. There is nothing to make our stitch length. There is nothing to take our fabric forward, that 2.5 mil or 3 mil or whatever it is that we have told our machine to do. In this case, it's 0.2 mil. There is nothing to tell the machine that. We are in control. So you, quite honestly, can have this wherever you want, and it doesn't matter. And if I turn my machine off and switch it on again, it will just default back to that 2.5. Honestly, that's fine. It won't stitch anything else other than what you do with it under your free motion quilting foot. Okay, let's get on to this final bit, which you'll think, why? But I promise it will make a difference. So let's pop over and check that bit out. Next up is quilting gloves. Why do we need some quilting gloves? Well, there's a couple of really good reasons why we need quilting gloves. First up is that you can see on these So Easy gloves here, the little knobbly bits on the end, we've got rubbery bits on the end of our fingers. Now, when we are quilting, we are moving our quilt around and we need to grip that fabric. Fabric can be quite slippy, and you can find without gloves that you're tensing up and you're really working hard to control that fabric. But your gloves with these rubbery bits at the end, or silicone, or whatever it is they're made of, make your life so much easier. And that's not just with free motion quilting, with your walking foot quilting as well. The same thing applies. You'll find that using gloves like this makes walking foot quilting just so much easier, just even in the act of feeding your fabric through in a straight line, because your quilt is heavy. Even a small quilt top is heavy. These make your life a lot easier. I've got two brands here, by the way. The ones I'm wearing are my very old trusted friends, which are Mashingers, which I can't pronounce to save my life, but they're Mashingers. And they're probably about twice the price of the So Easy ones, but honestly, So Easy ones are just as good. Probably Mashingers won't let me saying that, but both are fine, particularly when you're starting out. Get some nice, easy, So Easy ones and give them a whirl, or whatever local brand is to you. What you're after is this rubbery bit on the end, because that will make the difference for you. There are generally a couple of sizes that I've seen. There's a small to medium and a medium to large, so it just depends on your hand size, and then they're sort of left or right, they're interchangeable. So the rubbery bits on the end is a real massive benefit to gloves. The second thing is, can you see on my very old pair here how dirty the tips of these gloves are? It's because we've got all sorts of stuff going on. When we're moving our quilt around, we're going to pick up dye from the fabric. What we don't want to do is transfer dye onto other parts of our quilt as well. And any bits of grubbiness that we might pick up on our hands, we don't want that transferring onto our quilt. So let's just talk about our hands for a moment. Our hands can pick up dirt just as we're touching and going about our normal life. We are also, as humans, we secrete oil out of our hands. I know it sounds a bit disgusting, but we're all friends here, so just bear with me. What we don't want is any grubbiness that we pick up on our hands combined with the oil and then transferred onto the fabric of our quilt. So these gloves stop that happening, and then the grubbiness that you can see on here is just picked up from different fabrics and it remains in the gloves itself. So it really keeps your quilt nice and clean and bright and with no transfer of colour. So they're really amazing things to have. I didn't really see the benefit of them when I first started quilting. Then I put a pair on and I've never ever looked back. So get yourself a pair of these in readiness for free motion. And then in the next video, I am going to start on how do we actually get started with the free motion quilting itself. Okay, so I hope this video has helped. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and share, because it really does help support all the free tuition that you get out here in YouTube land. And if this has helped, I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.